There is a question I think about sometimes that I never say out loud, and I suspect you think about it too. Not the dramatic version of the question, not am I going to die, because we all know the answer to that one. The quieter version, the one that comes on an ordinary morning when you're standing at the window with your tea and the light is coming in a certain way and you think, almost without meaning to, how much of this do I have left? And what is it going to feel like? I don't think that's a morbid question. I think it's an honest one. And I think the people who ask it honestly and then do something with the answer are the ones who end up with more of what they were asking about. I want to tell you about a woman named Cecily. Cecily lived 3 houses down from the house I grew up in. She was old to me then in the way that all older people are old to children, without specific age, just old, existing in a category separate from the rest of life. She had white hair that she pinned up every morning. She had a garden that she tended with the kind of unhurried attention that I now understand takes decades to develop. She walked slowly, but she walked every day. She sat on her porch in the mornings with something hot in her hands, and she looked at the street like someone who had nowhere else to be and was entirely satisfied with that. I thought she was just lucky. The easy kind of old age that some people get and others don't, distributed by some combination of genetics and fortune that had nothing to do with anything she'd chosen. I was wrong about that. I understand that now in a way I couldn't then. Cecily lived to 94. Not just lived, was present, was herself, was sharp and mobile and opinionated until very near the end. And what I know now, looking back with the eyes of someone who has spent a long time paying attention to what keeps people like that, is that what I was watching on those mornings wasn't luck. It was a system. Unconscious maybe, never named, never written down anywhere. But consistent. The same things, every morning, in roughly the same order, for decades. I didn't understand what I was seeing then. I understand it completely now. This is what I want to talk to you about today. Not about extraordinary measures or difficult disciplines or anything that requires equipment or expertise or money. About 5 things that happen in the first hour of the morning that I believe, from everything I have observed and everything I have lived, are the closest thing there is to a daily decision to keep going, to keep functioning, to give the body and the mind what they need to do their work for another year, and another after that, and however many more there are to have. I cannot promise you 30 years. Nobody can promise you that. But I can tell you what I do every morning and why I believe it matters, and I can tell you about Cecily, and I can let you decide what to do with it. The first thing happens before my feet touch the floor. I learned why this matters after a scare I had some years ago, waking up too fast, sitting up before my body was ready, and feeling the room tilt in a way that put my heart somewhere it shouldn't be at that hour. My doctor said something that morning that I have not forgotten. He said the body at this stage of life is like an engine that needs warming up before you ask it to perform. You wouldn't start a cold engine and immediately drive at full speed. The damage accumulates in ways you don't see until something gives. So before I sit up, I wake everything up while I'm still lying down. I start with my toes, all of them, slowly, testing that they're there and that they remember their job. Then my ankles, rolling in small circles, one at a time. I open and close my hands, which my arthritis does not always appreciate, but which I do anyway, slowly, because a hand asked to move gently is safer than a hand asked to move suddenly. I bend my knees up one at a time and lower them. I turn my head side to side, noticing where the stiffness lives this particular morning. 5 minutes. That is all this takes. 5 minutes lying in my own bed, asking my body to wake up properly before I ask it to hold me upright and carry me through a day. But here is what I want you to understand about this that goes beyond the practical safety of it. Every muscle in the human body, at every age, responds to the signals it receives. A muscle that is regularly asked to work receives the signal that it is needed and it maintains itself accordingly. A muscle that is not asked to work receives the opposite signal. And the loss of muscle mass with age, which is real, which is significant, which is the single most direct cause of lost independence in older adults, is accelerated by exactly that. Not just by inactivity in the large sense, but by the small daily choice of whether to ask the body to engage or to let it slide. 5 minutes of movement before getting out of bed is the body receiving the signal, every single morning, you are still needed. You are still being asked to show up. And over years, the accumulation of that signal is the difference between legs that work at 8 to 5 and legs that don't. Cecily used to do something similar, I realize now. I remember watching her through the window sometimes as a child, seeing her lying in bed moving her arms in small ways before she got up. I thought it was strange. I know now it was exactly right. The second thing I do is drink a full glass of water before anything else. Before the tea, which I love. Before the coffee that some mornings I still want. Before I look at anything, think about anything, start any part of the day. A full glass of water, kept on the nightstand already poured the night before, so there is no decision to make and no distance to travel before I've done it. I came to this late, and I wish I hadn't. For most of my life I drank water when I was thirsty, which seemed like the obvious and sufficient approach. What I didn't know, what nobody had told me clearly, is that the sensation of thirst becomes unreliable over time. The mechanism that signals dehydration weakens, which means that by the time you feel thirsty you are already behind. And mild chronic dehydration, the kind that never announces itself dramatically, affects cognitive function, affects energy, affects circulation, affects the joints, affects mood. It mimics aging in ways that are not aging at all. They are simply the body running low on the most basic thing it needs. I spent years attributing to age things that were at least partly dehydration. The afternoon fog. The energy that ran out earlier than it should. The mornings that felt harder than they needed to. When I started drinking that glass of water first, before anything else, some of those things changed faster than I expected. Not all of them, but enough that I noticed, and noticing was enough. There is something else about this that I have come to believe matters beyond the hydration itself. Starting the day with one deliberate act, something small and specific that you do before the day has made any demands of you, sets a tone that is hard to explain, but easy to feel. The day begins with you doing something for yourself. Before you check anything, answer anything, respond to anything. 1 glass of water for Francis, because Francis is worth the first gesture of the morning. That sounds like a small philosophy, and it is. But small philosophies, practiced daily, become something larger over time. The third thing I do is go outside within the first 30 minutes of being awake. Not for exercise. I want to be clear about that because I know what people hear when an older woman talks about going outside in the morning. I am not talking about a fitness walk. I am talking about standing in the garden with my tea for 10 minutes. Or sitting on the front step. Or opening the back door and just being in the air for a little while before the day closes in around me. The reason this matters took me a long time to understand, and when I finally understood it I felt slightly foolish for not having seen it sooner. The body has a clock. Not a metaphorical one, a real biological clock that governs when you are alert and when you are sleepy, when you are hungry and when you are not, when your immune system is most active, when inflammation is highest, when repair happens. This clock is called the circadian rhythm, and it is calibrated, every single day, by one thing above almost everything else, light. Specifically, natural light, early in the morning, entering through the eyes. When that light arrives early, the clock sets correctly. Every system that depends on the clock, and almost every system in the body depends on it in some way, runs on time. Sleep comes when it should. Digestion works as it should. Energy peaks and drops at the right moments. Inflammation follows its proper pattern. When the light doesn't arrive, or arrives late, or is replaced by artificial light from a screen or an overhead bulb, the clock drifts. Not dramatically, not all at once. A little each day. And a clock that is slightly wrong every day, for months, for years, affects sleep quality, affects mood, affects metabolism, affects the immune system in ways that accumulate so gradually they become indistinguishable from aging itself. I think about Cecily on her porch every morning with her cup and the early light on her face, and I understand now what her body was receiving. She wasn't sitting outside because it was pleasant, though I'm sure it was. She was calibrating. Every morning, without knowing the word for it, she was giving her internal clock what it needed to run the day correctly. 10 minutes. The back door, the garden, the light. My tea gets to come with me. That is the only rule. The fourth thing is protein at breakfast. This is the one I resisted longest, and I want to be honest about why, because I think the resistance is probably familiar. I was raised in a time when breakfast was toast, or porridge, or cereal, or sometimes nothing at all if the morning was busy. Protein in the morning felt heavy, felt like too much effort, felt like something for athletes or young people with specific goals. I am neither of those things, and I told myself so for years. What changed my mind was not a study I read or advice I received. It was noticing, over a period of several months, during which I was paying closer attention to these things than I usually had, that the days when I had an egg in the morning, just one egg, nothing elaborate, were different from the days when I had toast. The difference appeared in the afternoon. Around 2 or 3 o'clock, on toast days, there was a flatness. A pulling down of energy that I had normalized completely, that I had assumed was just what afternoons felt like at this point in life. On egg days it wasn't there. Or it was there but smaller, later, less like a wall and more like a gentle slope. I tested this the way I test most things now, not rigorously, not scientifically, just by paying attention and being honest about what I observed. The pattern held up over weeks and then over months, and I stopped questioning it. Here is what I understand about why it matters beyond my own afternoons. Muscle mass is lost gradually throughout the later decades of life, and the rate at which it is lost is directly affected by protein intake. Not just by exercise, by what you eat, and crucially by when you eat it. The body uses protein most efficiently in the morning, after the overnight fast, when it is most ready to build and repair. Skipping protein at breakfast and eating it at dinner instead is not the same thing. The timing matters. And muscle mass is not about appearance. At this stage of life it is about function. It is about whether your legs can catch you if you stumble. Whether your arms can push you up from the floor. Whether your body has the reserves to recover from illness, from a bad week, from the ordinary demands of an ordinary life. Muscle is the infrastructure of independence. And every morning that you give it what it needs to maintain itself is a morning you have invested in that infrastructure. 1 egg. Some Greek yogurt if I have it. Occasionally some nuts alongside the toast that I still eat because I like it. Something real, something with protein, before the day asks anything of me. The fifth thing is what I call the morning problem. Every morning, within the first hour, I do one thing that requires my brain to actually work. Not passively receive, actively work. Solve something. Decide something. Engage with something real. For me, this is usually the morning review I have written about before, sitting with my papers, my accounts, my calendar, the practical business of my life. Going through what's due, what's coming, what needs attention. Making decisions about real things. This is not exciting. It is also not optional, in my mind, because what it does is tell my brain, first thing in the morning before the day has asked anything of it, you are needed. You are going to be used today. Stay sharp. The brain, like the muscle, responds to the signals it receives. A brain that is regularly asked to solve real problems maintains the capacity to solve them. A brain that is excused from difficulty, that is given only passive entertainment, only easy comfort, only the path of least resistance, loses that capacity more quickly than it would otherwise. Cognitive decline is real and it is not fully preventable. But it is significantly influenced by use. By whether the brain is asked to work, daily, in ways that require genuine engagement. I am not prescribing a specific activity. I know women who do the crossword every morning, and I know women who write letters, and I know women who call a friend and have a real conversation about something that requires thought. What matters is not the form but the function, the brain being asked to do something that it cannot do passively, something that requires it to be present and working. Cecily used to sit on her porch with the newspaper every morning. Not skimming it. Reading it. Thinking about it. Occasionally arguing with it out loud, which I found alarming as a child and now find entirely admirable. She was doing exactly this. Every morning, for decades, she was telling her brain that it was needed and expected to show up. I think about her often when I sit down with my papers in the morning. I think about what she knew without knowing she knew it, and what she gave herself by knowing it. Here is what I want to say to close, and I want to say it plainly because I think you deserve plain. I cannot promise you 30 years. Neither can anyone else, and you should be cautious of anyone who speaks in certainties about what your body will do. What I can tell you is this. There are people who live into their late 80s and 90s with vitality and presence and independence, and there are people who don't, and the difference between them is not primarily genetic. It is primarily behavioral. It is primarily the accumulation of small daily decisions made consistently over years. The morning is where those decisions happen or don't happen. Before the day has made its demands. Before the noise arrives. In that first hour you either give your body and your mind what they need to function well, or you don't. And the result of that choice, made every day for years, is what the later years look like from the inside. 5 things. Movement before rising. Water before everything. Light within the first 30 minutes. Protein at breakfast. One real problem for the brain. I learned some of this from paying attention to my own body. I learned some of it from watching what happened to people around me, both directions, the ones who kept going and the ones who didn't. And I learned some of it, without knowing I was learning anything, watching an old woman on a porch 3 houses down, who had white hair and a garden and a newspaper and all the unhurried time in the world. She knew something. It turns out it wasn't luck. Go outside this morning. Take something warm to drink. Let the light find you. That is where it starts.